Yeah, Simone, I think the White House would be wise to keep Donald Trump at home and not send him on the road. Listen, I can tell you running for governor of the state of Florida, not only because of the economic duress of voters, but now coming out of Minnesota, there is an odor around Donald Trump that cannot be washed off. This is now, I think we're going to enter a midterm where we were in 2006. Michael would remember where Republican candidates didn't want Bush 43 coming into town. It's odd for us to think about that given Trump's hold on the Republican Party. So certainly within a Republican primary, his import still weighs heavily. But I can tell you right now, he is an anchor around the necks of Republicans in general election politics. It is why you are seeing special elections swing towards Democrats by so many points, even in states like Florida, where we really are not registering more Democrats. Voters are just so frustrated with the economy that's getting away from them. And now with this moment in Minnesota that is forged in people's hearts and minds, it has distilled for them the chaos that Donald Trump has wrought upon the country. And so, listen, as a candidate, as a Democratic candidate, sure, I hope Donald Trump gets out on the trail more because his message is going to sink down ballot Republicans as he continues to escalate this.
David, to that point, it already has begun to, at least weigh down a number of Republican candidates, particularly Mr. Modell in Minnesota, who gave up his gubernatorial run because of the actions of this administration's immigration enforcement police. And how that ripples out around the country matters, and how the public receives that matters. You gave a talk last night, I happened to catch a little bit of, that went viral, in which you talked about in this moment, we must choose the right side of history, talking about Alex Preddy's death, talking about his memory not being, just a blessing, but a moment of change. And I think with respect for a lot of folks out there, buffeted by economic woes, buffeted by the horrific scenes on their television of their fellow Americans being killed by their government, buffeted by children being snatched up and taken off and used as bait to get their parents by ICE officials. The country seems poised for change. But how is it delivered? How does that delivery system work for them in states like yours in Florida or states like Minnesota? It's not just, we need to get rid of ICE, but then there are other aspects of this change that have to be made real for the American people.
Yeah, Michael, we are a nation that is broken tonight, not just because of Minnesota, right? We knew we were broken. We knew that we were afraid that Greenland was going to break out into World War III just 1 week ago. We've already seen the suspension of due process and constitutional rights. We've seen this enormous escalation of grift and graft and corruption. We're seeing Donald Trump respond to his worst impulses, and the people around him can't check him. And then what it leads to is this moment in Minnesota where an American citizen is disarmed and then shot 10 times and left lifeless, and his body lays there having been murdered. And this administration goes out and slanders him. And what it did is it distilled in the American people's mind this moment after 10 years of Donald Trump, the chaos that he has wrought. We know that the nation is crumbling around us, that we are mocked on the world stage, that we are no longer seen for our strength, but we are laughed at for our division and for our weakness. And I think what has emerged is a moment, a day in the legacy of Donald Trump, rivaled only by January 6th, where people of all political persuasions say, no, this cannot be the country we are. And so then the question for us, in my comments last night, were that we must choose the right side of history in this moment, regardless of party, because Minnesota matters, not just in Minnesota, but across the country. And Minnesota matters in down ballot races and the governor's race in Florida for this very specific reason, because what we are realizing as the nation has crumbled, as we witness Minnesota, is that this is the culmination of 10 years of irresponsible, weak, feckless, fearful Republican leaders enabling this president and allowing him to drive us into this moment of chaos. And so, yes, for me, it means in a race against Byron Donalds that, yes, Minnesota matters in a contest between David Jolly and Byron Donalds. And, oh, by the way, we also get to showcase the hypocrisy of a party that is not backing the Constitution. They're backing Donald Trump. They're not backing the Second Amendment. They're backing Donald Trump. They're not backing the blue. they're backing Donald Trump. And so for Republicans right now, this has taken the varnish off. It has revealed the frailty and the fragile framing of their entire coalition and their entire foundation. And the opportunity for us does not have to be to hit at all Republicans and ask them to litigate the last 10 years of their support. It's to ask them to think about the future and to be Democrats that embrace independents and Republicans in this moment, willing to choose the right side of history.
Well, I think the other thing that you in Florida sort of uniquely understand is that the economic speech is not separate from the immigration policy. They are very much tied. And I have been intrigued that as much as ag folks talk about the fact that their industry will be in decline without some of these immigrants, just the fear factor of people not wanting to show up to work, not feeling safe showing up to work. The fact that you have the construction guys saying the same thing, the fact that that has not penetrated with Republicans remains confounding to me, David Jolly.
Yeah, you know what's fascinating, Alicia? Look, my entire political story is a story of change, right? I was a Republican member of Congress. I spent 5 years as an independent. Today, I'm a proud Florida Democrat, not a reluctant one, because I found my home because the values I've been trying to exercise are deeply rooted in the Democratic Party. The reason I talk about values, Alicia, is this. Everywhere I go, I talk about three values that are rooted in the Democratic Party, but bigger than our party. The economy should work for everyone. Government can improve people's lives through access to health care, investments in public education, safe communities, home ownership, retirement security. And the third value is simple. We should be a place where everyone's rights are protected and their dignity celebrated, regardless of the color of their skin, where they were born, who they love, or who they worship. Now, understand, if we were to put that test against Republicans, are they fighting for an economy that works, for a government that improves people's life, and where everybody is celebrated? They fail on every single one of those values, the values. Policies get easy. Once we build a coalition around values that, yes, are rooted in the Democratic Party, but are big enough to bring in independents and Republicans into a new coalition. Listen, Alicia, we end up seeing a political coalition that has not emerged in this country in decades. And for people who are most concerned about Donald Trump, it's the coalition that answers the calling of how we turn the corner from this president.